Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another installment of IGN's WrestleFest. Good evening, I'm Gregory James Miller, alongside the voice of the WWE, the Fink, Howard Finkel. Fink, how are you this evening?
I am doing great, Gregory, and for good reason, because I'm going to be bringing the people at home the next batch of superstars from WWE Legends of WrestleMania, brought to you by THQ and Ukes.
That's right, folks. We'll be unveiling the roster every Friday and Monday until we've covered the more than 40 superstars in the game.
And that game will arrive in stores on March 24th. But what do you say we get to it, Gregory?
Sounds like a plan, Howard. When I think of WrestleManias, I think of glass breaking and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, hell yeah. Stone Cold Steve Austin, our first announcement on this week's program. And Stone Cold Steve Austin championed the Attitude Era in the mid-90s. When he talked, people listened, and that was the bottom line because
Stone Cold said so. When people think back about Stone Cold, they're going to think of the stunner and amazing feuds, like the one he had with The Rock.
The great one, The Rock, the people's champion. Here's another individual that came in virtually unknown in the WWE, cultivated himself, and moved on to become arguably one of the greatest pieces of talent that this organization has ever seen. So all I can say about The Rock, it's great that he's in the game. Oh, hell yeah, I can smell what he's cooking.
Howard, when people didn't like The Rock, he usually had some jerk manager in his corner. And if we're talking about legendary managers, Jimmy Hart comes to mind.
Wait a minute. How does a jerk and a legendary manager come together?
Have you heard Jimmy Hart speak?
Many times, and then some. I'll tell you a little bit of a story on Jimmy Hart. Back in 1984, I used to watch wrestling tapes from all over the country. I used to watch the Memphis wrestling tapes back in those days with Jerry the King Lawler, and he had a manager down there. His name was Jimmy Hart, and he was an absolute pest. And I told the powers that be in my company, we've got to grab this guy. The rest is history. He came in, and at WrestleMania in 1985, he accompanied King Kong Bundy to the ring. And to this day, Jimmy Hart will always go down in my book as one of the cagiest managers that we ever had. He could talk a mile a minute, but he always let his charges do more of the talking.
You describe Jimmy Hart as cagey. I would never want to be locked in a cage with Hawk and Animal, the Legion
of Doom. Indeed. Now, tag teams came and tag teams went in WWE. But when these boys from Chicago came, you stood up and you watched and you appreciated what they did. Hawk and Animal were power personified, and the Doomsday Device, which was their finishing maneuver, never got replicated.
I'll tell you one thing. Another guy you don't want to get in a Chicago street fight with? Roddy Piper.
Well, maybe you do, because if you got yourself into a Chicago street fight, a Glasgow street fight, any kind of street fight, chances are Roddy Piper would emerge victorious, because that's the kind of a guy the Hot Rod was. Loquacious, very controversial, meant business, the people believed in him, and Roddy Piper, part of the Legends of WrestleMania game, is an honor that is richly deserved.
Fink, let's talk about mat technicians. Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Well, he was a mat technician in his own way. Greg Valentine had one speed, and that was deliberate. When he would get into the ring, he wasn't fast. He wasn't a quick as a cat type individual. He was methodical, he was cagey, and he absolutely used that to his advantage, and combined with the figure four leg lock that the Hammer put on, it was victory after victory.
From figure fours to 2x4s, Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Ho! Hacksaw Jim Duggan here is a classic example of another individual still competing in WWE rings today. He was from Glens Falls, New York, and then when we had territories back in that day, Duggan always had a dream to come into WWE. He realized it, and what a character. He captivated the fans with his hard blue-collar attitude inside the squared circle. Did he meet up with a 2x4? He certainly did.
From New York, let's move across the pond to the British Bulldog.
Davey Boy Smith. You want to talk about the adage that good things come in small packages? Davey Boy was not a tall individual, but he had power, he had strength, and he knew how to get the job done. And who can forget, Gregory, the classic match SummerSlam 1992 at Wembley Stadium, when on his home turf, Davey Boy Smith became Intercontinental Champion.
When I think of championships, I think of gold. When I think of gold, I think of money. And when I think of money, I think of the man who told me everybody has a price.
And you're referring, of course, to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, another great addition to the Legends of WrestleMania game. Now, Ted DiBiase really got the ire of our fans rubbed the wrong way. Of course, he felt that he was the be-all to end-all, and the money, the green, could do anything. You remember the time that Ted DiBiase brought a little fella up on stage and he said, son, if you can bounce the basketball 15 times without letting the basketball go, I'll give you X amount of dollars. And the kid was right on target. And when he did 14, you knew it was a done deal. But what happened? You remember what Ted did?
Kicked the ball.
He certainly did. And I'll tell you what, his character and his mindset when he was here in WWE was second to none.
Of course, Ted DiBiase is synonymous with the hold known as the $1 Million Dream. And that seems like a good place to put this episode of IGN WrestleFest to bed.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you on Friday when another set of WWE Legends of WrestleMania superstars are announced.
Until then, stay tuned for Game Scoop and your local news with 5-time Brisbane Emmy Award winner, Ramblin' Ryan Clements. Good night, and have a turnbuckle tomorrow.